So I've been talking about how the womb and the feminine have been so heavily targeted. But the system didn't just go after the womb. It also went after its protectors. Because while women were sent down to birth frequencies and realities and have the portal of life, men were supposed to be divine guardians and protectors. So where the hell did it get so twisted? So let's talk about the masculine harvest sites. To fully collapse divine order, the masculine signal had to be hijacked. Slowly, strategically, and silently. Not by direct force, but by distortion. While the feminine was harvested through body-based portals, the masculine was harvested through mind-based illusions, false freedom, and engineered emotional repression. Strength was rebranded as dominance. Sensitivity was pathologized as weakness. Protection was rewritten as control. Instinct was severed from soul. Boys were trained to numb, obey, chase pleasure, and silence truth, until they no longer remembered what it meant to be a guardian. This is how the signal was stolen. So starting with one of the most severe hijacks, pornography. This is the visual signal hijack. The widespread normalization of pornography was not about pleasure, it was about programming. Behind the promise of stimulation was a deeper objective: disconnection. Porn rewired arousal pathways to bypass emotional resonance and soul-level recognition. It taught the masculine to desire submission, fragmentation, and dominance instead of mutual power. Over time, porn use created neural pathways that reinforced numbness, guilt, and avoidance of intimacy. The divine masculine's ability to sense danger, feel energy, and discern distortion was dulled by overstimulation and shame. Pornography was one of the most effective tools ever used to weaken the masculine signal while cloaking itself in empowerment. Up next, we have war and militarization. This is the weaponization of the protector instinct. True protectors were not born to harm, they were born to stabilize. But the system knew that if it could redirect the masculine instinct to protect into an order to obey, the field could be split. Men were conscripted, indoctrinated, and sent to war under the guise of patriotism. Battlefields became soul fracture sites, trauma rituals that disconnected the masculine from source. The masculine signal, once aligned with truth and integrity, was severed through acts of bloodshed, grief, and survival-driven identity collapse. Generations returned home with PTSD, ancestral echoes, and buried memories that bled into their family lines. The system didn't just use war to kill men, it used war to break the masculine blueprint. Then we have fatherline corruption and emotional starvation. One of the most strategic attacks on the masculine came through the fatherline itself. The system introduced cycles of absent, abusive, or emotionally unavailable fathers, not by coincidence, but by design. Boys were taught that emotion was dangerous and vulnerability made them prey. Love was withheld or weaponized. The healthy masculine, stable, attuned, warm, and present, was replaced with caricatures: the tyrant, the ghost, the addict, the stoic. This seeded men with silent shame, a fragmented identity, and a subconscious rejection of their own tenderness. As a result, many could not lead, protect, or love from wholeness because no one ever modeled it for them. Then we have endocrine disruption and chemical castration. The physical body was not exempt. In fact, the system launched a silent biochemical assault to collapse the masculine form from within. Plastics, pesticides, and processed foods were saturated with endocrine disruptors. Testosterone collapse became a widespread, unspoken epidemic. Male fertility rates declined in every industrialized country. Depression, lethargy, and emotional instability rose, alongside normalized pharmaceutical suppression. The goal was not just sterilization, The goal was signal interference. By altering hormonal expression, the system could weaken the masculine's ability to act, speak, feel, and protect with force and clarity. And last, we have false power loops and social engineering. The masculine was never meant to dominate. It was meant to protect. But the system replaced spiritual authority with ego-based control. Masculinity was defined through conquest, aggression, and detachment. Men who embodied softness or intuition were rejected, mocked, or ostracized. Boys were taught to perform rather than feel, to seek validation through status instead of truth. The more a man internalized this programming, the more predictive, manipulable, and out of alignment with his source role he became. Even spiritual men were targeted, led into savior complexes, sexual confusion, or false polarity teachings that distorted their path to remembrance. The system didn't just want to disarm the masculine, it wanted to make him forget who he was. By severing his connection to his own instincts, flooding his body with chemicals, sedating him with pleasure loops, and shaming his vulnerability, the system ensured that most men would never rise in time to protect the feminine, the earth, or themselves. But the return of the true masculine changes that. Every single protector who remembers, who reclaims his signal, restores his integrity, and anchors his power in love, collapses an entire generation of hijack attempts. This was always about more than war, more than sex, and more than shame. It was about frequency. It was about guardianship. It was about who would rise when the field was on fire.
Looks like you forgot, once again, how powerful you are.